So before I start this video, I know that in one of my previous videos where I was working on the cob kiln, I said that I would share some pictures of what the beginning of that process looked like when I was starting out with the cob. Since then, too, I've gotten a different kiln, so I've decided to turn this into a pizza oven instead of a kiln because I actually have an electric kiln that I'm going to convert to gas. So enjoy the rest of the video. Thank you. Hello everybody, welcome back. Sorry it's been a little while since I've made my last video. I've just been kind of working on some things and been doing a little bit of throwing on the clay wheel. So again, as I'm pretty new to it, there's been a lot of steep learning curves, and while I definitely we'll be showing you guys a lot of things that I do wrong and making mistakes, I kind of wanted to get a little bit of a feel for the wheel before I started shooting videos of me actually throwing on the wheel. So you're just not watching nothing but the do not do's. So, but so far things are going pretty good. I don't know if I've ever shown you guys any of this. This is some of the test pieces that I did. I did a firing to just try out some of the different glazes that I bought. So this was called, I think it was called Dove Gray. It was kind of a bluish gray glaze that actually has some black spots that show up in it, kind of supposed to simulate kind of a stoneware glaze. So I actually really kind of liked it. I think I'm going to use it quite a bit on some of my finished pieces. And I played around with just under glazes, which it comes out very matte, which is kind of to be expected. But again, these are just the old broken terracotta pieces, so they're not really refined clay, so it may look quite different on some really good quality clay. But you know, again, I just kind of wanted to get a feeling for what it was going to look like. Some of it came out super ugly. I don't even remember what color this was. This might have been, this is the coconut white maybe. Probably should have marked some of these. But this one kind of came out really ugly. It's got a lot of like yellowish colors that leached out of the clay. So it kind of mixed with the white, and it's really, I don't know if you can see it very well, but I didn't really care for how it kind of came out. Actually, let's see if I can, I don't know if I can tap on it and make it look a little better. Sorry, kind of still figuring out how to shoot these things. But anyway, that came out okay. Then again, these aren't refined pieces. Now this one actually, this is a different like light gray. It did come out pretty nice. And again, some of the spots where it didn't cover completely might be down to the fact that the clay that I put it on was pretty poor quality. So anyway, definitely be trying that. I will show you some of the pieces that I have been throwing. Don't laugh, some of them are pretty bad. I'll show you like some of my first pieces. Did not like them, but I'm definitely getting a hang of it. Let's put this, ooh. Let's see here. I gotta figure out this tripod, folks. Okay. It's a little bit. So anyway, this is the first piece that I did in glazed. Hopefully after it's fired it will look a lot better than what it does now. Originally this was actually supposed to be a little coffee mug, although obviously it's very little. But again, I'm just getting a feel for it. And it, you know, it came out fairly round. Not great, but fairly round. That little spot there is actually more due to the glaze, but you can also see some inconsistencies in the thickness of the wall. So I've been learning quite a bit about how to throw things on the wheel. Then I ran into a problem with my clay. So after throwing a lot of unsuccessful vessels and recycling my clay, you know, wetting it or mixing it back up and then letting it dry out and trying to re-throw it, my clay became what they call very short, you know, almost like a cookie where it crumbles. Even though the clay had a lot of water in it, it was very soft and it was very easy to start throwing. I would find that as I would be lifting the cylinder, any kind of stress in the walls, it just seemed to almost like just break apart. And it wasn't even very thin. So I realized that there was a problem with the clay. So what I did some research on other people who have had problems with their clay, and they said, well, it could be because as you continue to wet the clay down, it actually leaches some of the properties of the clay that actually make it plastic out of the clay, and each time you recycle it, it can actually get harder and harder to work with. And so they suggested either adding fresh clay to it to help make it more plastic again. Another thing that I happen to be watching, another potter's video, he mentioned adding vinegar to his recycled clay because it makes it more plastic. And so I did a little bit of both. I added some more fresh clay to it, and then I added some vinegar as well, and then remixed it and let it kind of firm up again to where I could throw with it. And it wasn't perfect. I still noticed a little bit of the tendency to want to crack, but it was definitely more throwable because, again, I threw one thing. This, again, was another attempt. And again, you know, it came out okay. I got a nice trimmed foot on there. But obviously it's very thick, but I really could not, with this, go any thicker, and actually you can actually see it in there. I don't know if you can see it, but right in there, it actually wanted to start splitting again, even at that thickness. So again, that told me that this was actually, I think, before I added the vinegar to it, but I couldn't get much thinner than that, and it would want to start breaking and splitting apart. So I added the vinegar, and I said that seemed to make quite a bit of difference. So I'll show you a few more things that I have thrown. So then I threw this after I added the vinegar to it. Again, it's a little bit wonky, but you know, I tried a little bit of a scrape decoration below it, and then again, a trimmed foot. But obviously that's not like a totally trimmed foot. It was too thin for me to go super deep. That's why it's such a shallow foot that I put on there. But you know, it came out kind of nice. And again, some people don't trim their feet at all. They just leave it flat. So then I did this kind of like a T-bowl with a nice trimmed foot on it. And as you can see, they're getting much more consistent, much more rounded, and a little texture, a little chattering texture down here. Again, I can't stress enough the things that I'm learning on the wheel is how round and how centered you throw your clay is extremely important. If that's not right, nothing's gonna be right from there on in. And so what I had been learning is that really the base of the pot where the clay meets the wheel is the absolute most critical place that you need to make sure that your clay starts out centered, because that feeling on your pinky against the wheel shows you where center's at, and everything else you can adjust it into center using that as a reference. But if you're out of center at that point on the wheel, as you come up, nothing will be center. You'll never be able to just be in the air and fighting this thing back into center. You have to have that root of the pot centered going forward. And so as I started doing that, I definitely started getting more satisfactory pieces out of it. Here's another kind of T-bowl coffee mug, handleless coffee mug. But again, you know, definitely getting more rounded and better formed pieces that I'm actually a little more proud of. The chattering texture was not coming out too well, so I had it, you know, trying to figure out why I was not able to get a chattering texture on my bowls. And I think I have figured out the problem with it was that while I trim quite slow, because again, I'm trying to be careful and not take off too much clay at one time, the wheel has to be going quite a bit faster when you're chattering it to make that trimming tool hop off the clay and create the little divots. So I just did another piece, and the chattering, I think, came out quite a bit better. It still could be even deeper, but you can definitely see that I'm getting a better chattering texture along there. And then I re-wet my finger and really kind of went along the rim to make it kind of a nice texture difference between the chattering texture and the smooth texture of the outside of the rim. So those are kind of some of the pieces that I've thrown. I said definitely they're getting better. I definitely got to learn not to handle my pot so much, because it looks like I'm starting to affect the finish as I'm going. But yeah, so the chattering texture on this actually came out pretty good. You're starting to see more definition in it. Again, this was a much faster wheel spin. And again, I'm trying to learn how the different moisture contents of the clay, you know, is it leather hard? Is it maybe a little too hard to start doing the chattering texture? So definitely, like I said, learning a lot of different things. Anyway, one of the things that I'm gonna try and experiment with, I figured I might bring you in on it, is that one of the first pots that I did, I had a kind of a fatal flaw in it. Let's see if I can get this to stand. I had kind of a fatal flaw in it, and that was that the bowl, I made it very shallow, and then I tried to trim a foot, not realizing that every time you trim, you really must know the thickness of your bottom of your pot before you start trimming it, because it's very easy to trim through the bottom and break it. Well, I had a little bit of a breakthrough on the pot, which I was able to kind of repair with some moist clay. It was still wet enough where it was able to be kind of mended. But then the problem was that when I went, because I'm once firing my clay, I'm obviously glazing it raw, the greenware, it's taking on a lot of moisture, and I did not take that really into account, that it was going to weaken my greenware when I made it. So my walls of my pot were way too thin. So what happened was when I glazed the inside of the pot and it got wet enough that when I set it back down, a few minutes later, enough water had seeped into the wall of the pot that really the base just collapsed and broke through. Now, I was like, well, crud, I'd just throw it away. But I hate to do it, because it was one of the first pots that I actually got somewhat of a bowl shape, and I actually got it off the wheel head without destroying it. So I was really not wanting to throw it away, and I really don't know what to do with it now that part of it's glazed. So I thought, well, is there a way to mend bone hard clay? Now, from everything that I pretty much read, once your greenware is bone dry, it's really not very mendable, because it's gonna, no matter what kind of moist clay that you put on it, unless you re-wet the whole piece, the moist clay is going to continue to crack as you try to fill the cracks. So let me show you what I have come up with, what I'm going to try to do. This may be a fantastic failure, but I figure, you know what, the only thing I'm going to do other than this is just to throw the pot away. So I might learn something from it, or might learn a way to actually do this. I don't know. I will be right back. Let me grab the piece. So this is the piece that broke through, sadly. once it broke through, I just kind of chipped the rest of the way, and I said, well, what if I actually made another base for it, let it go bone dry too, and then try to join it? Maybe it might take several applications, because what I have seen from other potters mending bone dry pots, that they've been able to mend cracks with other bone dry clay hydrated with vinegar instead of water, because the vinegar seems to, again, keep it more plastic. It dries differently than water. It will tend to crack, but not as badly. So my thought is that possibly I will be able, maybe, I might be able to, over several applications of the vinegar clay mixture, I might be able to fasten a new base to it. So I got on the wheel and I threw a disc. I calculated about a 12% shrinkage, so I went 12% beyond what my gauge told me I needed to span this, and it actually, I felt like it dried pretty good. So that's pretty much what I've got, but obviously now you can see that there's a crack there. And so what I'm planning on doing is maybe starting to fill this with this clay mixture that I've made of vinegar and bone dry clay. So actually, sorry that I didn't bring you in before. I didn't think to make the video about it until after I already started. But so this is just bone dry clay that I've had in there, and I'm just adding a little bit of vinegar to it to kind of rehydrate this a little bit. You don't want to do too much, which I may have already just done a little too much, but again, I've just got to kind of play with this, mix it around, getting those pieces in there to kind of rehydrate a little bit. I said, but the vinegar is definitely a better option from everything that I'm reading, other than using water, which is not a very good option. So again, I want this to kind of be a paste, but I want it to be kind of a workable paste. So you just got to keep on mixing it. It's starting to get a little more paste-like. One of the things I'm learning more than anything is just, patience is the key to a lot of this. It's just you can't make your pots in a hurry. I assume that you cannot mend your pots in a hurry either. Again, I'm fully expecting this to crack. Hopefully it will not completely separate, but I'm expecting it to crack. And then I will let it dry, and then hopefully the cracks will be smaller than the original crack, and I will add another application of this, and I will keep going hopefully until I'm hoping that I can at least achieve some sort of satisfactory finish that I will then be able to reglaze and fire it. Because it's a shame. I mean, we make a lot of mistakes, don't we, in our pots? And so it's a shame that if you make a mistake, you're pretty much, start over, but that's not it's not really always the best option. I think I'm going to start with this upside down. As you can see, I've already trimmed the foot because I didn't want to have to worry about it. I knew it was going to be bone dry when I would attach it. So I trimmed the foot and stamped it ahead of time. I did make myself a seal too, which I'm waiting for enough stuff to go in the kiln to do a firing. But along with some decorating wheels, which I will show you, I also have made another seal with the year stamp on it, 2020. Because I think it'd be nice to look back and say, oh, okay, what year did I make that pot? What year did I make that pot? So along with my initials, which are already stamped in there, in future pots going forward, I look forward to having the year stamp in there. But I think I'm going to do this upside down first, and the reason being is because I want to somewhat make sure that it's centered on the hole. Now, most people that I've seen do any kind of thing like this too, it's also important to kind of score the surfaces of what you're going to put back together, because again, that will also help the two pieces to bond together. Again, if you have a flat surface, if you just have just a flat surface against a flat surface, it's very easy to break apart. So what I think I'm going to do is, I got a little vinegar here in the mason jar, and I'm just going to wet my finger with it and start to kind of go around the edge and just re-moisten it just ever so slightly. Let's see if I can get this to stay. And just start to ever so slightly moisturize, maybe rough up the surface, which I got a hacksaw blade here. Maybe we'll rough up the surface a little bit and kind of get these two pieces ready to want to join back together if possible. You can see almost as quickly as I'm putting it on. That's the thing about trying to do a bone dry piece, is that really it's going to want to suck the moisture immediately. It's going to want to suck the moisture away, which is part of the problem with the two different clays wanting to dry together. So again, I'm going to keep wetting this surface, making a slip, and keep wetting it down to where I can get something that hopefully will want to sort of be rough and joined together. So yeah, I'm just kind of playing around today. But I was pretty encouraged that I was able to throw a disc and get it even with the shrink to be roughly the right diameter circle. That was pretty cool. got to play around with, I got myself a gauge. So I got to play around with that a little bit. Okay, like I said, now got the edges kind of roughed up, and so I'm going to continue to add a little bit of this vinegar to the surface. And then what I'm going to have to do, kind of do the same thing. I have to kind of do the same thing with the bowl. I'll take the vinegar, go along the edges, kind of try to re-soften this clay just a little bit. I'd already kind of scored this a little bit in trying to kind of get the, because again, when I poured, or when I did this, it wasn't exactly the flattest of, it was not the flattest of bowls anyway. So now I'm going to try to attach a flat disc to something that maybe wasn't flat to begin with. So I really tried to put it back on the wheel and kind of almost grind the edge somewhat flat again. Alright, so I think I'm going to take some of this mixture first and just start kind of painting it along the edges. I said I'm hoping that the vinegar really is going to make the difference and allow me to do this. But again, if it don't work, it don't work. But again, you already put work into something, and you hate to just kind of throw that away, although sometimes you do have to just cut your losses. But we're going to see if we can get away with not doing that on this. See if we can actually fix something. So again, sorry if I'm going in and out of the camera frame. Again, I'm not really all that used to this. But so now I'm taking that slip that I made out of the vinegar earlier that you saw me mixing in the clay. So yeah, like I said, we want to see if we can save this bowl. You've already got some time invested in making it in the first place. And so, alright. So now, see if we can kind of squidge the two pieces together. And now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this slip and I'm going to try to work it into the seam, into the cracks. And again, I'm expecting this to break, and I'm expecting to have to kind of redo this maybe in several more applications. And I said, from pretty much everybody that I've read online, they said that this really doesn't work. But I figured, why not try it? Why not try it anyway? You're like, oh man, that's looking pretty good. But yeah, it's definitely gonna crack some more and break some more. I said, as I'm rubbing it into, I'm kind of trying to work it into the actual crack a little bit. Okay. And now maybe a little bit on the inside here, same thing. The inside is going to be a little bit more interesting of a proposition because obviously I'm going to want a smooth kind of interior. And I'll more than likely have to re-glaze this, which, look at that, it's actually peeling off of the glaze. I may even have to wash some of this glaze out. I didn't know how that would work, trying to put clay on top of glaze. It might be, again, a big no-no, but I didn't know it was a no-no. So for all you who watch this and like, wow, I can't believe he's even trying that, indulge me. Sometimes you just got to see yourself that this won't work before you throw in the towel. I'm starting to run out of clay mixture a little bit. some more of that vinegar and kind of just trying to smooth it out a little bit. Like I said, I fully anticipate, even if this does hold somewhat, that I'm going to have to do this several more times. And then if it does work, then I will reglaze the inside of this. I need to make up some more slip. So actually you'll get to see, can I zoom in on this camera? No, I cannot. I may have to bring you closer in, or maybe I'll move my stuff so you can see what I'm trying to do here. Oops. I'll be right back, folks. Yeah, I'll have to do it right about here. Oh, I almost forgot. I also wanted to show you guys some of the other, I said I would show you guys some of the decorating wheels and the seal that I had made. So let me just show you those quickly. So basically it's just a rolling wheel with a pattern on it that as you roll it along the clay, you can impress different textures into it. So this will be kind of more like a cross hatch. This one right here will make more like a rope pattern into it. And then one with just some simple wheels, some simple circles that it'll impress into the clay. And then here is the one that I was telling you about with the 2020. Obviously it's going to be kind of hard. Actually, I think it's showing it in the so it looks like it's right side, but it's showing the reverse image, the mirror image. That's how I carved it in there. So when it presses into the clay, it will show the 2020 this correct way. So fear not, I did carve it correctly. It's just how the camera is shooting this scene, like it's in the mirror. But yeah, you can see the 2020 there. So I'll put that in, and you'll be able to tell what year. I'll be able to tell what year that I made my pots. So anyway, so let's move on. The nice thing about doing a lot of throwing is that you end up with a lot of little trimmed pieces. I think this was actually the edge that I cut off when I made that bottom disc. You know, I made it a little bigger, and then I figured out about exactly what size I wanted to make the circle, so that when it shrank, it would hopefully fit. And so it worked out pretty good. I said I'm actually pretty happy. With the dimensions of the foot. Wow. We're out in the sun today, and it's really drying everything out mighty quick. So basically I'm just taking, this is a piece of the handle off that first glaze cup that I showed you. This was the original handle. Well, I put this on too wet. So all these things you got to learn. I put the handle on too wet, which then when it shrank, it actually snapped the handle. So I just decided to make that a handleless drinking cup. So again, you know, you want to basically take the clay and kind of break it up into small pieces. The smaller they are, the better they're going to actually rehydrate, or the quicker they will rehydrate. So, but yeah, things are drying out mighty fast. So yeah, this stuff's pretty dry. I'm just gonna break up a little bit more. Okay, so take that. add a little vinegar. Once you get her added in, start mixing. I said, and being that when you get bone dry clay, when you start to rehydrate it, it rehydrates much faster than if it already has if it has a little bit of water in it already, if it's like weather hard. So like this is actually coming together really fast. Really move here because the sun's going to dry out what I'm putting on there already, and I kind of want a chance to smooth it down. But again, I'm not going to use any water in any of this process because the vinegar, from what I understand, is kind of the key to making repairs with bone dry clay. So everything that I'm doing, I'm going to do it with vinegar, and hopefully that will help me to make a successful repair on this. I'm trying to get all the lumps out real quick. It's looking pretty good. Might be a few little lumps in there, but hopefully good enough. So once again, and I'm going to take a little more vinegar, put it in my little jar here, because I'm finding that this is kind of similar to like when I have it on the wheel. You want a little bit of straight liquid to help you smooth over the mend. So again, I didn't get all the lumps out. But again, I'm just kind of roughly filling in the cracks. Okay. Now I'm just using that straight vinegar again to kind of smooth it down, smooth the repair down a little bit. Which definitely is helping. Like I said, it's never going to be a beautiful work of art. It wasn't really to begin with. It was, like I said, it was kind of like the first pot that I actually threw that I was able to get it off the wheel successfully without cutting the bottom out of it or having all kinds of other problems. So I just figured I hate to just throw that one away. I'm just playing around now. Like I said, as kind of anticipated, I'm kind of disturbing the glaze that was already in there, which may in itself make my repair weak. But I figure if it doesn't, then I will just pour glaze over the top of it, and hopefully you won't see a lot of my repair. Although originally this was going to be a clear glaze, and now having made the mistakes that I've made, it might look better if I had maybe more of a opaque glaze. So I may end up doing something like that, just to kind of conceal the repair. But I mean, this is I'm actually somewhat at this stage anyway, happy with what the inside of the bowl looks like. I'm just trying to smooth it out more and more. But yeah, you got to experiment a little bit, you know. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and it's good to, okay. So here's the outside again where I made my first rough joint. It's actually dried really fast. So I'm going to go ahead and re-wet my finger with the vinegar and try to smooth out some of that roughness. Use the back of my nail a little bit and get some of the rough spots off. Yeah, clay is pretty fun to work with, and like I said, you know, I think half of what I'm learning is just how to correct mistakes that I make, or why they happen in the first place. Again, that's where centering your pot on the wheel and all of that is extremely helpful, extremely important to do it and do it right, because you can fix a lot of those things, but it's time consuming. And so, you know, obviously what they say is true, is like prevention's worth a lot more than the cure, because if you can stop a problem before it starts, much better to do that than to have to spend a whole bunch of time like I'm doing right now fixing mistakes that I've made. So I can see already cracks are forming a little bit where I've already made it. But again, I'm hoping that each time this dries that she will crack less. I mean, yeah, she's definitely opening up a lot, and I'm expecting that. I'm actually really will be happy if it just does not fall apart and holds together somewhat. And if it does, once it's dried, I will do another coat and continue to smooth it down. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully I won't have to throw the pot away. So hope that was somewhat educational. If nothing else, an exercise in futility maybe, but we'll try it and see how it turns out. Just figured I'd show you a little bit more. The bowl has dried a little bit, the one that I was mending. So as you can see, I'm actually pretty happy so far. This is actually the second time I've gone over the crack from the outside, and it really cracked very little, which I was surprised. Now the inside cracked quite a bit more extensively. I've actually gone over it a second time to kind of mend those cracks a little bit. But what I thought I might do right now is to maybe try to smooth the inside, because it's a little rough. I mean, it's the basic shape, but to smooth it down a little bit, I actually thought maybe I'd throw it on the wheel here for a few minutes with a little bit of vinegar on my finger, wet with vinegar on my fingertips, and try to smooth out the inside just a little bit. So I figured I'd go ahead and bring you in on that. So I don't know, I've never really shot in here. The quarters are pretty close, pretty tight in here, so I'm sorry if I'm in your way. It's not going to be perfectly centered. Again, it's pretty, you can see that it's pretty wonky anyway. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of vinegar down in the middle and just kind of let my fingers rub out, hopefully, a little bit of the stiff, or the bumps. Smooth out the inside just a little bit. Again, I was never expecting a really perfect finish from any of this, but I just wanted to know if it was possible, again, to join two pieces of bone dry clay with this vinegar treatment And I said, so far I have to actually say I'm pleasantly surprised with how well it has done. Again, this ain't perfect, but actually I can tell that it did smooth quite a bit of it down. There's a few kind of ridges. I just kind of want to get any kind of really high spots to smooth out a little bit. It was actually pretty interesting how the pattern in which the inside of the bowl, the inside of the bowl cracked pretty substantially again, which I was pretty much expecting. I guess the only thing that I didn't really think about is the fact that I put so much clay on the inside here that I didn't really score the inside of the bowl. And again, really creating that rough surface would have probably helped the clay to adhere to both pieces better. But because the inside of the bowl was still pretty smooth, where the clay started to dry on that smooth surface, it started to peel off. But not really so bad that I didn't feel like it could. Plus I left it out in the sun so it dried faster, which also probably did not give it much of a chance to bond. So, but again, what I think is going to happen is that each time I do this, it's going to get progressively better, progressively smoother. So again, I don't know if you can really see it, but I mean, it's not perfect, and obviously it looks rough around the edges, but a lot of that is going to go away once I smooth out the inside and re-glaze the inside. A lot of that is going to disappear, I believe. If nothing else, I'll go with an opaque glaze, and then that will hopefully go away completely. But again, as you can tell from the outside, I mean, it's pretty dry, and it really has not cracked anymore. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes, but I think it's actually possible to maybe save bone-dry pieces that have broken very significantly. Here I've made a whole new base for this pot, and we'll see how it works. So anyway, this is, again, an experiment. We'll see how it works, and we'll catch you next time. So don't be afraid to let your hands get dirty, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.